Good afternoon. Welcome to Inside Indiana Sports Now with Kent Sterling. It's Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. We're brought to you by the great people at Today's Dentistry. Dr. Mike O'Neill, the best dentist that there is, the only dentist that I've gone to the last 27 years. Make him your dentist today. 317-849-2933 is the number. If you like what you hear, subscribe, like, ring the bell, do all that stuff. I appreciate it. Want to give a shout out to a friend of Tim Pagano. Tim Pagano, a friend of the show. Harrison, his old frat brother, a huge IU fan, is serving our country with distinction and honor in the Middle East. We could not be prouder to have him watching with us today. Let's talk about Indiana basketball. All right, four things about Indiana basketball. Number one, Rick Pitino, I caught on the Dan Dockett show, and at the end of the interview, Dan asked whether Indiana had contacted Pitino. Pitino said, here's what you do. You fly to Boston, and you make an offer to Brad Stevens that he can't refuse. That's exactly what you do. You fly up there like Tom Hayden did, going out to the West Coast to get that part in the picture for the Godfather's godson, right? That's what you do. You make him an offer you can't refuse. You don't get back on the plane until you have the contract signed. This is what you do. Brad, what's it going to take? Get it done. Let's go. Whatever it takes. If you could find somebody to pay $10 million to make Archie Miller go away, how much are you going to be able to get from alums to get Brad Stevens to come to Indiana, for goodness sake? The second thing, what Brad said on NBC Sports Boston is utterly meaningless. He said he's not coming to Indiana. You know what? Until you fly to Boston and you have that conversation, he's in no position to decide whether he wants to come to Indiana. I think a week before Boston hired Brad to be the coach of the Celtics, if you had asked Brad if he was going to leave Butler for any job in America, he would have said, no, I just love it here. This is my favorite place in the world. I am at home in Hinkle Fieldhouse, and I'm never leaving. And then a week later, Danny Ainge comes in, bunch of money, private plane, and Brad says, yes, you've got to have that conversation with Brad Stevens in order for us to take his denial seriously. Number three, IU fans have not cannibalized the program. Jay Billis went on the radio today in Louisville and said that Indiana fans have cannibalized Indiana basketball. I'm not sure what that means. Are you telling me, and I like Jay Billis, but are you telling me, Jay, that Indiana has not gone to the NCAA tournament the last 5 seasons because of Indiana fans? What have Indiana fans done that has so alienated people that somehow they feel like this is a toxic job? Nobody spends more money on recruitment. Nobody spends more money on facilities. Not many spend more money on a coach. They gave Archie Miller everything he wanted. $3.5 million a year guaranteed for 5 years. And if at the end of those 5 years he was fired, he was going to get 50% of what he had coming to him in that 7-year deal. If he was fired before that, he's going to get paid for the whole 7. How is that alienating? What have Indiana fans done to so piss off the national media where they look at Indiana fans like Indiana fans are delusional? Indiana fans say we like an Indiana guy. Do you know why? Because Indiana people understand Indiana. And they know that Indiana is special. You hire a guy from Michigan or you hire a guy from Ohio, they think Ohio is special. They think Michigan's special. A guy from California thinks that California is real special. Texas. What place is more provincial than Texas? Texans love Texas. You're going to hire an Indiana guy to go sell the virtues of the University of Texas in Austin? Of course not. You bring an Indiana guy to coach at Indiana so he can sell the virtues of Indiana in a way that resonates with people from Indiana, for the love of God. I don't know how that's so mysterious or how Jay Billis sees that as cannibalizing this program and turning this program into the mediocrity that it's become. Indiana is mediocre because it ran from its success. It decided, Indiana did, with Miles Brand and all those guys, that they decided that they wanted nothing to do with any legacy of Bob Knight. And if you want to distill The 29 years of Bob Knight into a thrown chair, a horrible statement to Connie Chung, and a bullwhip thing. If that's what you want to distill Bob Knight's 29 years at Indiana down to, you can. You can make him look like an absolute buffoon because he made himself look like a buffoon through those missteps and, let's face it, a bunch of others. But what he was a really good basketball coach who held players accountable, helped develop players, put them in a place on the court where they could succeed, worked matchups exceptionally well. That's what he did. He was a really good basketball coach, a brilliant and wonderful basketball mind whose personality kind of got in the way of his success. And when his success wasn't hanging banners anymore, it was just going to the NCAA tournament and getting knocked out in the first or second round, fans got a little bit tired of it. Miles Brand got a little bit tired of it. Arrogance doesn't play well in Indiana. And Bob Knight was about as arrogant personally to people at Indiana as any basketball coach who has ever lived. That didn't play well. But you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. What you do is you embrace the culture that led to the success. Look, you've got Gene Cady, right? Gene Cady was one kind of guy. Matt Painter is another kind of guy. But the culture at Purdue is very, very similar from Cady to Painter. You got the same thing at Wisconsin. You've gone from like Bennett to Ryan and now to Gard. These are guys from within the same basketball family who are coaching to the same culture. It happens, and when it happens at places, when the culture belongs to the university rather than the men who coach basketball there, you got a chance for something special. That's what Indiana fans want. And that isn't combative, and it's not somehow cannibalistic. What it is really smart because they've seen it work. This isn't about going back to 1993 or 1987 or 1981, 76, 73. It's not about going back to those years. It's not about embracing even the style of basketball that was played during those seasons. What it's about is embracing the Indiana identity as it existed and evolving it forward into a modern day form. Who is best suited to do that? Brad Stevens is one of the least arrogant people I've ever met in my life. Brad Stevens is an absolutely wonderful guy. Here's the thing. Here's me being selfish. All right? And I'll be perfectly honest. I don't care where he coaches in basketball. But I want Brad Stevens to coach basketball at the college level or the high school level, frankly. Because Brad Stevens makes not just basketball players better, he makes people better. And I think those efforts are wasted on a team like the Boston Celtics, an NBA team where, let's face it, nobody in the NBA is looking to a coach to help them develop as a human being. You look at the guys who came through Butler. Number one, Brad Stevens was really, really good at knowing who fit his culture at Butler. And number two, he was really, really good at making sure that in the 4 years his players, his student athletes were at Butler, that they were well taken care of and they were put in a position where they could kind of pursue their potential. And they did. Look at those guys. Whether it's Alex Barlow or Ronald Norred or the great Matt Howard or Zach Hahn or Shelvin Mack or Gordon Hayward, you can go down the list of all the guys that Brad Stevens recruited successfully, brought to Butler, and then coached up to become wonderful players, wonderful human beings, wonderful fathers, wonderful business people, wonderful coaches, all of them. Not just because Brad instilled it in them, but because he recognized it in them when he recruited them. That's what he does. I don't want a guy doing those things that are depicted in Season on the Brink, the great John Feinstein book about Bob Knight's 1985-1986 team. I don't want that. What I want is somebody to help these young men become really good adults and at the same time teach them how to play basketball and put them in a position to compete at the highest level and go win. That's what Brad Stevens does. In the NBA, you know what? There are a lot of boxes that are not NBA coach boxes that are college coach boxes. And Brad Stevens checks all of them. And I wish he was in college. I would love him to be at Indiana. But if not Indiana, then someplace else. You know, because there are kids every single year, young men every single year, who are not being taught those things by Brad Stevens. And I think that that's a loss for us societally, for goodness sake. And I know he's having a great time and he doesn't have to recruit, but I love Brad Stevens as a college coach, and I hope that he comes to Indiana. And I hope that Indiana, and you know, these people who talk about Indiana fans, you got to get out of the dark ages. And Bob Knight didn't come and walking through those doors. What the hell are you talking about? There might be some deranged IU fans that would love to see a return of Bob Knight's level of, I don't know, arrogance, combativeness, whatever you want to call it, and his genius come to Indiana to coach basketball. That isn't going to happen. Those people don't exist. You don't have Adolph Rupp at Kentucky. You know what I mean? John Calipari's at Kentucky. He's a completely different guy. But they play like Kentucky, and so Kentucky wins. I hope that Indiana is smart enough to bring in an Indiana guy to teach Indiana kids, not just from the state, but the way they play, how to play basketball at a high level and go win games. It's not about turning back the clock. It's not about being basketball archaeologists and going back. We've got to run that motion. And you know what? The shot clock. Let's get rid of the shot clock and the three-point clock or shot. My God, what are we doing? This is heresy. It's all back cuts all the time. That's not what anybody associated with Indiana University as a fan, coach, administrator, whatever, wants. Modern basketball played with accountability by kids who understand the game. That's it. Really, really talented guys who know how to play, are willing to learn how to play, and are going to play selflessly. That's what people want at Indiana, not another version of Bob Knight, for God's sake. And we haven't cannibalized anything. Archie Miller didn't lose a single game when he was at Indiana because of basketball fans in Indiana. It's preposterous. All right, let's talk about the Colts. Colts haven't made a move, at least not one that we know of. Now, we know what the rule is, right? You could talk to people, agents, beginning yesterday, and not come to an agreement, but it seems like everybody's coming to an agreement except the Colts. The Colts are among 10 teams in the NFL that haven't made an acquisition to this point. I think they're going to get going in this thing. They don't pick up the phone and call Adam Schefter every time, you know, Chris Ballard heads to the men's room. That's not the way this works on West 56th Street. They're going to sign players in their own time. Do not judge the offseason based upon the bonehead money that's being spent early. We go through this every year, and I say the same thing. I admonish you every year in the same way. Don't do that. Wait for Chris Ballard to do his work. And then when minicamp starts, say, geez, I don't know. Maybe this wasn't a great offseason. Or say, wow, Kent was right. I should have been more patient. Yep, the Colts, they had a really good offseason. Combine the free agents with maybe a trade and then the draft, and you take a look at what they've got, and you think, Chris Ballard may have known what he was doing. We didn't think so on March 16th, but they don't play games on March 16th. It's all going to be okay. Even wait for training camp, for goodness sake, to judge the fruits of Chris Ballard's labors during this offseason. I love talking to you every day. This is really fun for me, and thanks to so many people for coming along on this ride. If you have a comment, please leave it. I try to answer all of them, at least the relevant ones, or ones that I can figure out a response to. It's great fun. We do it every morning on Breakfast with Kent at 6 o'clock straight up on Facebook Live and on YouTube. And we do it every afternoon at about 4 o'clock on Facebook and YouTube and everywhere you get podcasts. I enjoy the living hell out of this, and I hope you do too. And again, Harrison in the Middle East, serving our country, thank you so much for your service. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning. Brought to you by the great people at Today's Dentistry. And remember, subscribe.